And I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, Madam Minister, we welcome you in the President's chair of the Security Council. We thank Nikolai Mladenov for his briefing. Today, once again, we are discussing the situation in the Middle East. What is the Middle East? Can we imagine looking at that region in isolation from North Africa or from the Persian Gulf? In our opinion, the answer is clear. But at the heart of all of these problems in the Middle East is the Palestinian-Israeli settlement. Recently, we have been seeing attempts to shift focus from this problem, which is at the root of everything that is happening, and replace it with other, in large part, artificially inflated subjects. At the same time, on the Israeli-Palestinian track itself, there are dangerous trends at hand, an expansion of the practice of unilateral steps and also the aggressive revision of previous agreements. We wish to say unambiguously that for us, the internationally recognized basis for the Middle East settlement, including UN Security Council resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the Madrid Principles, remain unshakable. We are convinced that today, now more than ever, there is a need to take practical measures to get the peace process out of this dangerous deadlock. Russia, both on a bilateral basis and in other formats, will continue its efforts with the aim of the resumption of direct dialogue between Palestinians and Israelis. We are extremely troubled by the analysis of the situation offered by the UN Special Coordinator on the Middle East, Nikolai Mladenov, who, on the subject of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, is saying that the situation there can only really be kept from further deterioration without talking at all about improving it. Such a state of affairs, sooner or later, and most probably sooner, will lead to the disappearance of this already unacceptable virtual line between this fragile stability and chaos. In this connection, concrete measures are needed to rectify the situation, and what needs to be done is well known. First and foremost, there must be an end to Israeli settlement building activity in the West Bank and to the policy of demolishing Palestinian property. Both Palestinians and Israelis need to refrain from aggressive and provocative rhetoric and violence. And that is the lens through which we look at statements about plans to annex settlements in the West Bank. Madam President, we are firmly convinced that in isolation no breakthroughs can be achieved. This has been confirmed many times by the history of the Middle East. In spite of this, there are still insistent attempts to impose alternative settlement schemes that undermine the long-standing and internationally recognized parameters for resolving the Palestinian problem. The decisions of the US administration on Jerusalem and the illegitimate recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Syrian Golan Heights are a gross breach of international law, and in particular Security Council Resolution 497. In this context, once again, we would like to underscore that the Golan unquestionably are Syrian territory that Israel occupied as a result of the 1967 war and which it illegally annexed 14 years later. We, along with the majority of our colleagues, find it self-evident that the only way out of this situation is to combine international and regional efforts with a central role for the UN and its Security Council. Active steps are needed to rectify the dire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. We will continue to work with the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. UNRWA's activities have not only a humanitarian but also political dimension, as they provide an important stabilizing effect on the Palestinian territories and countries in the Middle East. Israel and Palestine have an important religious meaning for hundreds of thousands of members of the monotheistic religions. The rapid establishment of lasting peace in these lands is in the interest of all Christians, Muslims, and Jews. At the same time, the destabilization of the situation in the Middle East and North Africa has dealt a serious blow to the religious and ethnic minorities living in the region. Extremists are using ethnic and religious factors to incite hatred and to swell their own ranks. Urgent, immediate measures need to be taken to stop the mass exodus of Christians and other minorities from Middle Eastern countries and preserve the unique balance of coexistence that was present in the region and existed for many hundreds of years. Madam President, the outstanding Palestinian problem, alongside the many years of instability in the region, is in general leading to an increased potential for protests and radicalism. The situation requires unifying steps to be taken by responsible participants of the international community. The Secretary-General does have an instruction to work in this area in accordance with Security Council Resolution 598. Those in the region have an interest in this. The need to come up with a resilient mechanism for collective security in the region based on equal dialogue is also increasingly relevant. The Russian initiative on this aims specifically at unblocking conflict situations and coming up with confidence-building and monitoring mechanisms. We call upon our international and regional partners to have a close look at the Iranian initiative on confidence-building and security measures in the Gulf of Hormuz. They are an invitation to serious dialogue to improve the situation in the region, which we have constantly been calling for. This is relating to the Hormuz Straits. Without consolidating the efforts of all those interested, including those in the region and their immediate neighbors, it will not be possible without doing that to create the conditions for ending bloodshed in Libya and ensuring transition to dialogue in the interest of the political diplomatic settlement of the conflict under UN auspices. We are closely monitoring the situation prevailing today in Lebanon, and we hope that the country will be able to overcome these difficult times for it and emerge from it even more unified. In Yemen, signs have appeared of a modest de-escalation of the situation, and there are prospects for achieving progress on the path towards a peaceful solution with the assistance of the SRSG. We will help to support these trends. Russia has made substantial efforts and engaged in constructive, inclusive and honest work without double standards in order to move the focus of the conflict in Syria onto the political track. We expect progress in the settlement on the basis of agreements from Syrians themselves. They and only they bear chief responsibility for the fate of their country. Madam President, we stand ready for constructive cooperation with our partners on all items on the Middle East agenda. We are convinced of the need to increase the level of our coordination, to come up with consolidated and unbiased approaches in the interests not of external players, but rather of the states and peoples of the Middle East. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.